Northwest Music, presented by the Cumberland Hotel. We have live music Wednesdays and Saturday nights with award-winning musicians and a menu offering everything from burgers to ribs, wings, and fish and chips.
Welcome to Northwest Music. I'm Doug Cox, and we're very excited to present this inaugural episode of our show to you. This is going to be an hourly long show that we will put together for you once a month, and the first half of the show is going to feature all sorts of fascinating people from the music industry. There'll be producers and managers and people that are promoters and presenters, all sorts of folks. And then the second half of the show is going to feature a guest musician or musicians, and there'll be people that are touring through Vancouver Island, or there'll be local musicians as well. So we're really pleased to present this to you. And my co-host is Mary Ruth Harris. Hey, Mary Ruth.
Hi. So we are here in the Shaw TV studios in Campbell River. This is where Northwest Music will be coming from. And what are you most looking forward to about this show?
Probably the playing. I love to play, and I love to play with a bunch of different people, and I love to show off all my guitars as well. So we'll do a little feature maybe every week on one of the different instruments. I love that part. And getting to expose music to a bigger audience is always fun too.
I think one of the things I'm looking forward to is the story behind each guitar, and the stories that the musicians that are going to be coming to visit are going to be sharing with us. I'm really looking forward to that, because when they share their personal stories, it gives you a sneak peek behind what's going on the stage.
Sure, yeah, and they all have different stories. There's lots of amazing people that work behind the scenes as well, and we hope that you find that interesting. I'm lucky enough to be around those people all the time, but it's been amazing in my career as a musician of 30 some years now. I've watched the music business in Canada actually become an industry, and it's growing and growing and growing to include a huge family of people.
Yeah.
So that would perhaps bring us to our first guest.
It certainly does.
Our first guest on Northwest Music is Erin Benjamin from Ottawa, and Erin is the Executive Director of Music Canada Live, which is an incredible new organization that has been put together, I believe mostly by Erin. She'll tell us about that in a minute, to help educate people about live music in Canada. On their website, it says, Music Canada Live is the voice of Canada's live music industry, advancing and promoting its many economic, social, and cultural benefits. Hello, Erin.
Hello, Doug Cox.
It's good to see you, even on Skype. So did you start Music Canada Live?
No, I was hired to be the executive director. It was founded by 13 companies, live music companies, and some for-profit, some non-profit. And it's a long story there, but they got together and decided that it was really time that live music in Canada had its own united standalone voice that would help tell its story. So the companies got together, they incorporated the association, and they hired me as the first executive director to sort of dream with them to build programs and services and sort of really frame our advocacy priorities. So that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years.
So what are some of the things that you've thought of and identified as what's needed for the Canadian music industry?
Well, when we talk about raising awareness of the economic, social, and cultural value and power of live music, it's incredible. You look at other sectors of the music industry, and their trade associations have been around in some cases for decades. So when it comes to live music, really sort of proprietary, territorial, entrepreneurial group of people, whether they're nonprofit festival directors like yourself or concert promoters who are booking small clubs. And what we really need to do is sort of work together to find common goals, of which there are many. So maybe that's helping the municipal or provincial or federal governments understand why a festival is important to a local community. How does it impact economically? Absolutely, but how does it enhance the quality of life for the people who live there and the people who visit there? And how can we use live music experiences to attract more people to our communities, to encourage people to stay in our communities, to encourage people to come and live and work in our communities who maybe, maybe it's a new technology company who's come to town. Companies who are looking to relocate are looking for a wide range of opportunities in any given city or place. They want to be able to attract and retain a really smart young workforce. So I think there are certainly some organizations that were really good, and I'd look to the nonprofit folk festival community for sure as a group of organizations who have historically been really good at championing their own story. But when we zoom out and look at the entirety of the live music industry in Canada, we have not done a good job independently of working with governments and building those policy frameworks that really, again, help to leverage the value of a music economy. So Music Canada Live was really born out of a need for that. And it's certainly working. I mean, it's just it's an idea whose time had absolutely come. It still astonishes me to this day that it didn't happen 20 years ago when the music industry really, or 15 years ago when the music industry really started to shift.
Right. It's amazing. I mean, I'm sure for our average listener or watcher that they're thinking, geez, I just go to concerts. I don't think about this stuff at all. Or, I mean, I know as a festival director that I'm surrounded by this way of thinking all the time, and we have to convince our community that we have a very substantial economic impact on what we do with our festival. For the average person, though, they probably don't even realize that the music industry is this big and there's this much thought put behind it. And I guess the only reason that could happen is because it's a major economic driver. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We did an economic impact study in the province of Ontario where we determined that the impact on GDP in 2014 from live music activity was $1.2 billion.
Wow.
$1.2 billion, bigger than the film and television industry in the province of Ontario. So, and I would say to that concert goer, I think you're absolutely right. We're talking about really raising or educating and raising awareness in both the public and private sectors, because maybe that audience member has a small business. Maybe that audience member works at a local restaurant near the festival site where people are coming to eat before the show, before the headline act, or whatever it is. I mean, the ripple effect is exponential, and you can't look at the live music industry without being able to. Everything is intrinsically linked. So when we look at other industries, whether it's automotive, forestry, fishing, technology, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the live music industry is 20,000 jobs in Ontario. And again, a massive impact, a huge tax revenues at every level of government. So when we really start to pick apart, I don't need every live music fan in Canada to be able to quote the statistics I might share with you today. But what's really important is that we're able to, I think, as a society, ultimately begin to articulate why live music is important to us. There's the economic piece, and there's the cultural piece. Why does it make where I live a better place, or a place I want to visit? Why does it make it more exciting? Why do I want to go to Osheaga in Montreal? Why do I want to go to the Mariposa Folk Festival in Orillia? What about those places and spaces and experiences is important to me as a human being? And then there's the social aspect. How do I feel as a human when I connect with my neighbors at a community event, or at a festival I've been going to for 20 years, or a place I take my children to, something that my family loves and is all more, blue skies in Ontario. They talk about the next generation having been conceived there. I'm sure it's a couple generations now conceived at blue skies. I mean, really, we need, what I would love to see on the public piece of the work that we're doing is really helping Canadians begin to be able to find language and articulate why live music is important to them. Because without that, we can talk about why healthcare is important. We can talk about why education is important, why clean water is important. These are all things that obviously greatly impact our quality of life. But the list doesn't stop there. And I think it's really important fundamentally that we start thinking about music, especially in today's world, at how it actually moves us, what it means to us, and how it connects us to each other, and why that's important.
Right. Now, I understand that the organization first started in Ontario. How did you expand to cover the entire country? And how is it logistically that you're going about building those relationships with local governments that aren't based in Ontario?
So it didn't start in Ontario. It's always been a national organization, and 13 of the 13 companies, a couple of them were from outside of the province.
Okay.
So we've always had a national mandate. We have about 111 members now, and they're from coast to coast to coast, including Northern Canada.
Awesome.
And really, those members have come on board. It's one conversation at a time, usually, between me or of my board of directors, or Doug and I had a conversation at Folk Alliance last year about him and his festival getting involved, and it's those opportunities to really, it's slow but steady growth, because we really want to be people to recognize the value and see the relevance in the programs and services that we're developing on their behalf. It's really important to have a big tent here. So we have small clubs and we have huge concert promotion companies. And because back to those common goals, ultimately it's really the ecology of live music. Again, I'm going to say in the words intrinsically linked, you can't have the big concert promoters and the major festivals in this country without having the incubation, the smaller stages and the smaller festivals who are really developing talent and growing audiences and helping them understand what an artist's career in development actually looks like. So we had our first election last year, and we were able to bring a whole bunch of new faces onto our board of directors and represent the country much more. We covered a lot more ground on our board of directors, including Nick Blasco from Victoria.
What is your favorite part about what it is your organization is doing?
Oh, do I have to just pick one?
Okay, top 5.
There are so many. I'll go back to telling this story. I don't think, the funding framework, government agencies and their policies, the music industry has grown up without live music planting a flag in a united fashion at all. Live music, again, like I'll go back to the people who are our members, they're concert promoters and they're festival directors who have just been fighting tooth and nail to get an artist on a stage in front of a fan. And outside of the traditional music industry for what it used to look like, I think one of the things that's really compelling for me is being able to see light bulbs go off when people recognize where live music fits in the career of an artist. Right now, Canadian artists are earning more of their living from live music than ever before, and the majority of their living is coming from live performance. This is a shift from years ago when it was about recorded music. Artists are making money from shows. They used to use shows to sell product. It's reversed now. So the product is selling shows, and the industry's completely changed. So I love the idea that people are waking up to the fact that without the stage, there is no show. It sounds really simple, right? Without the festival, there's no crowd. Like, these things are very obvious, but honestly, when you look at the policies, whether it's investment or funding policies in different agencies, whether they be municipal, provincial, or federal, there's no recognition or very little recognition of the importance of live music. So my favorite part is drawing a big red circle around the stage and pointing to policymakers and stakeholders that I get to connect with on a daily basis. Imagine today's music industry without a stage. What does it look like? That's what happened to the recording sector, right? So what are we doing today to protect, preserve, and promote Canada's stages, big, small, indoor, and outdoor?
Erin, is there something that somebody who's just a big music fan, which is hopefully what most of our watchers are, not likely going to have a lot of music industry people watching. Is there something that those people can do if they have a passion for live music that would contribute to the growth of this idea?
If you already love live music, take a friend to the next show. Take a friend, and next time you go to another show, get that friend to bring somebody else. Support live music. Get to know the people who are putting those shows on. Support those venues. If they have food there, buy supper there. Running those venues, as anyone who runs a small business understands, is one of the hardest things. We're seeing venues close across this country for all kinds of reasons, leaving major gaps in not just the touring networks across this country, but in the experience of a city. Look at the Carleton and Halifax as an example. And you know what? I know that I'm an industry person. I talk really fast. I'm very passionate about my job, and I can spout statistics and numbers. But I was a musician, a touring musician for years. I'm a fan. I'm a consumer of live music. And when I love music, I tell someone else about it. That's the best thing you can do. You love music, get someone else to see a show, because there's nothing like that live experience. And I would also say this: remember, think about what life would be like without that opportunity, because we could lose it. And some communities lose it when they lose a club, when they lose a festival. So anything that you care about, think about ways that you work hard to, again, preserve, protect, and enhance that experience, and make sure that it's there for tomorrow and all the tomorrows. You got to show up, and you got to convince your friends to show up too.
Sure. One of the things that we do as Vancouver Island Music Fest is we have started to pay performers to go into our local schools, in particular our elementary schools, to play for the kids, because I remember when I was a kid, seemed like it was at least twice a month we'd get to see a musician come in from either from a different culture, a different place, and just introduce themselves to us. And where we are now in northern Vancouver Island, that's a rare opportunity for kids. So we've been doing that, and it's really amazing to see kids get excited by live music. A lot of them have never even seen an instrument before, which for someone who's a baby boomer, that's almost unheard of. And I'm wondering if are you mainly gearing your work towards baby boomers as well, or is there a way that you think we can engage young people more than we are in the live music scene?
Do you know there's a very terrifying trend that I'm sure you've noticed, and that is that kids in universities today, like we did, and I don't know how you're watching the show. I don't know how old you are, and so maybe your we isn't my we. I get it, but when I went to university, I saw shows all the time. Because there were shows to be seen. So I've met with a bunch of university programmers and promoters, and there's an organization that brings them all together at an annual conference, and I've spoken there. And what I didn't realize has been happening for a number of years now is that universities are not, for the most part, programming live music. Some are, but nowhere near what other generations had access to. So as a result, we're not fostering. There's going to be a huge gap in terms of live music consumption over, in the coming years. So your festival audience, so we always worry about audiences getting older. When will that bump or that blip come with those kids who are not experiencing live music right now? So I think that's a major concern and something we're trying to address. Something else that we're looking at really closely in different municipalities are all age bylaws, restrictions, or regulations to make sure that there's accessibility in terms of getting kids and music together in a live space. Sometimes it's not easy, and that's really, really fundamental. And to your point about music in the schools and music education, working really hard to support organizations like Music Counts at CARIS, the Canadian Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, who produce the Junos, and taking a look at, there are small organizations like Arts Can Circle and different groups of people who are really trying to get instruments into the hands of kids and inspire them. It's our job absolutely to make sure that kids are engaging with music however we can. I mean, it's heartbreaking. Part of the problem is that education is provincially legislated and not federally. And so it's hard to sort of go one province at a time in terms of, picking apart the education system and trying to rebuild music programs. And so I know festivals sort of, they do their thing in their communities. It's fundamental work. And I'm optimistic that in my own kid's lifetime, there will be a sort of a rebirth of comprehensive music education programs in schools.
Erin, thank you so much. That is very, very insightful and really good information. And if anybody in our audience would like more information, please visit the Music Canada Live website. There is a ton of information there with lots of links. And in addition, you can contact Erin directly through that website. Erin, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Total pleasure. I'll do my part and crunch all the numbers, and all you folks watching the show, buy concert tickets and support your local artists and touring artists. And together, we will make sure that live music is a major part of the lives of Canadians for a long time to come. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I love this.
Thank you, Erin.
On Dunsmuir Avenue in Cumberland is the Cumberland Hotel, and every Wednesday night is an acoustic night with award-winning musicians Cox, Bachman, and Lee. A 5-ounce burger and any pint. Pool tables, darts, food, and music. Now back to Northwest Music with Mary Ruth Harris and Doug Cox.
Welcome back to Northwest Music. I'm Mary Ruth Harris. We are here in the studio in Campbell River, and we are very excited to welcome our special guest, Mr. Drew Gonsalves.
Come let me tell you about my friend Joe. He spends all day sitting by the radio. Tell him to come up but he won't go. He only waiting for the bomb to blow. He said some weapons missing and they don't know where they went. And one of them might be nuclear. And unconfirmed reports have confirmed this fear. Is that today is the day something go happen. Ring-a-ling, you hear the siren sing. Run for cover, the walls are tumbling. Dong along, shout it around. The ground shaking, the sky is falling down. Ring-a-ling, you hear the siren sing. Run for cover, the walls are tumbling. Dong along, shout it around. The ground shaking, the sky is falling down. They have a satellite watching above his head, a next camera set up by his bed. When he talks on the phone, they know what he said. You feel all this would have the man upset, but he says this he happily endures. Nothing else will help him to sleep secure, and the whole while he's feeling reassured. I feel that Joe is mistaken the disease for the cure. Ring-a-ling, I hear the siren sing. Run for cover, the walls are tumbling. Dong along, shout it around. The ground shaking, the sky is falling down. Ring-a-ling, you hear the siren sing. Run for cover, the walls are tumbling. Dong along, shout it around. The ground shaking, the sky is falling down. You think Joe would have felt a fool when the bomb he found was just a plumber's tool? When the noise in the night was the neighbor mule, the training camp he reported was a Sunday school. When the anthrax he took down to the police turned out to be a whole hunk of moldy cheese. You think this would put the man mind at ease, but he could smell a dirty bomb in a plate of rice and peas. Ring-a-ling, you hear the siren sing. Run for cover, the walls are tumbling. Dong along, shout it around. The ground shaking, the sky is falling down. Ring-a-ling, you hear the siren sing. Run for cover, the walls are tumbling. Dong along, shout it around. The ground shaking, the sky is falling down.
Yeah,
All
Drew.
right.
That was great. So, Drew, you're with the band called Cobo Town, out of Toronto, right?
Yes, I am.
And all your players come from Toronto as well?
No, our players are kind of spread out in different cities, even different countries. Some of our players live in Ottawa. One of our guys actually lives in Trinidad, and he joins us for tours. He is freezing himself right now.
Oh, yeah.
This is warm compared to Toronto, but very cold compared to Port of Spain.
Right.
And two of our players that we play with live in London, England. So we
Okay.
yeah. So we meet when we have shows.
So you have to do some pretty serious touring just to afford to get your band together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what is that instrument that you're playing?
This instrument is a cuatro. You see them in the southern Caribbean islands and in Venezuela. It's actually Venezuelan national instrument, but it's played widely in Trinidad and was often featured in old-time calypso recordings.
Oh, okay. And it's a nylon string instrument.
Yeah,
How
it's
is
a
it?
nylon string instrument, tuned very similar to a ukulele, except the order of when the pitch goes up and down is a bit different. You know,
Oh, okay. Sweet. Now, you do a lot of right-hand things that are probably peculiar to that instrument, right? A lot of you I was watching you earlier, and your right-hand techniques are, like if you're a guitar player, they're fairly odd.
Yeah, it's a kind of, they call it cut and scratch back home, but this kind of, a lot of slamming your fingers against the strings to create percussive sounds. It's an accompanying instrument, so and the music is quite rhythmic, so you kind of mimic what kind of the drums would do on the strings.
Oh, okay. It's a beautiful sound.
Now, Drew, what is the history of calypso?
Oh wow, the history of calypso goes back quite a ways. The first references to a music being called calypso in Trinidad are from the late 1700s.
Oh wow!
But really, calypso started to develop in the years after emancipation.
Okay.
And what's ended up happening was a lot of communities, leaving the plantations, went into the neighborhoods, the areas around the city of Port of Spain, and so these new communities like East Dry River, Cobo Town, they were created, and it's out of those communities that the kind of carnival music that was already in existence in Trinidad, started to grow into what we now know as calypso.
So explain what Cobo Town actually was.
Cobotown is just one of the communities around Port of Spain that figures very importantly in the early history of Calypso. Now, in Trinidad, there's a stick fighting art called calenda. And it's like kind of like Brazilian capoeira. It's like a martial art, a fighting art, but also a musical art. And but when these stick fighters are fighting each other, right? There's usually two singers, one from either side, that sing like taunts and boasts against the other side to like in a call and response form. And it was out of that music, and Cobotown was a center for that music, that Calypso was born, you know. And as time went by, they started telling longer stories. They often became very political or satirical in content, and lo and behold, by the early 20th century, you had, you know, these grandiloquent calypsos reporting on all the scandals and of the day.
In a way, it's a precursor to rap music.
Yes, and in many ways, actually, because one of the, you know, you have rap battles where they battle with words and insults.
Right.
And back in the early days of Calypso, and you can still see this sometimes in Trinidad, they have a Calypso war, where Calypsonians would get up and they'd improvise insulting verses at one another. So. And
do you take part in that sometimes?
I wish I was better at you know, spitting lyrics out of my mind, but no, not outside of the touring van.
Well, so it's an extremely lyrical music, where the lyrics are really an important part of the message, right?
Yes, yeah, Calypso is really lyric driven, you know, and it's I mean, there's definitely Calypsos that are very festive but even then often, you know, there's a lot of humor in the lyrics, and that's always been a big part of that music.
At the same time though, your rhythms are really sophisticated for a lot of musics that the lyrics play such an important role. What's going on rhythmically underneath it might not be as exciting or complicated as what you're doing. Do you think that's true?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think there's some types of music that may have that, but in Trinidad, it came through an interesting process. In the late 1800s, drums were very, very strictly banned in Trinidad. They thought that they encouraged public lewdness and immorality, and they thought that they also encouraged riots. Often at these big sort of outdoor drumming parties, you know, riots would develop, and so you know, to keep the peace, they banned drums very strictly. So all of those rhythms had to have a place to go, and they went on to everything. People got very inventive. They went on to the quattros and guitars and or bottles and spoons, and eventually, I mean, this really found its height in the steel pan, you know, decades later. But I've seen. Gosh, I was at a party in Trinidad. I saw a guy playing a toaster with his drumsticks. So, you know, and that's something that comes out of that. You know, having no place to put all this rhythmic content.
Wow.
Now, Drew, how old were you when you wrote your first song?
My first song was an angst-ridden heavy metal tune at the age of 9 or 10, and that was the music I was interested in when I actually lived in Trinidad. And but when I came to Canada, I kind of, through old recordings, rediscovered Calypso music. And I think I was about 14 or 15 when I started writing in that style.
How old were you when you came to Canada?
I was 13 years old.
13,
yeah.
Huh? So was it a real culture crash for you to come?
Well, it was a place I was familiar with because my mother's parents lived here. So while we lived in Trinidad, we used to visit quite often. And when I've lived here, I visit there quite often. So it's, but yeah, initially it was, you know, it's a different pace of life, you know, which you don't notice as much when you're 13 years old.
Sure.
But we came in the middle of February to Montreal. And so the winter that was a real novelty before felt more cruel then.
Is there a large Trinidadian population in Montreal?
There is now. We didn't really. No, there wasn't at the time. And I moved to Ottawa where there was a small diaspora. And then about 12, 13 years ago, I moved to Toronto where I think half of Trinidad lives in Toronto. You know, there's a lot of Trinidadians down
And do
there.
you run into people out west while you're out here?
Yes, we run into Trinidadians everywhere. There's not a place, like even in Calumet, I didn't think Caribbean people would venture that far north, but I've run into groups of Trinis up there. And yeah, out west here, and I can see why Trinidadians would actually come out this way. They like Trinidad's mountainous and by the sea, even though our mountains are a joke compared to these snow-capped majesties that you have out this way.
Sure. Well, let's hear another song.
This song is by the mighty Spoiler. He was one of the great Trinidadian calypsonians of the 1940s and 50s. He died relatively young. His real name was Theophilus Phillips, but he was one of the most inventive lyricists of the time, and quite, he was quite funny in his songs. And this particular song is called Magistrate Try Himself, and it's about a judge who tries his own case in court. And it might seem, a fantastical thing to imagine, but in the years running up to the composition of this song, there were about 4 or 5 cases in Trinidad where judges did try their own cases in court, and even 1 or 2 of those cases, the judges in a sign of judicial integrity actually fined or sentenced themselves. So here it is from the late 1940s, Magistrate Try Himself. Well, this one is class. They charge a magistrate for driving too fast. Well, this one is class. They charge a magistrate for driving too fast. They had only 1 courthouse in the district, only 1 magistrate to run it. Well, if you see how all the people flock up the place to see how the magistrate would try his own case, he self tell himself, you are charged for speeding. He self start to shout, the policeman lying. He self tell himself, don't shout, this ain't no sport. And he charge himself for contempt of court. Aha, he said, go ahead, let me hear the charges. So the police said, well, if you see how the man could speed, and he pointing at the magistrate, Johnny Mead, the magistrate asked him, who you talking about? Is you who I mean? The policeman shout. The magistrate pick up a looking glass and ask himself, was it true you was driving fast? He self tell himself, you are charged for speeding. He self start to shout, the policeman lying. He self tell himself, don't shout, they said no sport, and he charge himself for contempt of court. Why lam pam palam babale da de balom pam padam pam badela badada pam padam pam. Well then, Mr. Carut, he get up and he started to prosecute. The judge then called his lawyer to defend the defendant, who is your honor. And the whole while the lawyer talking, sometimes he's serious, sometimes he laughing. At time the magistrate tell you himself, look, I have a good mind to take away your license book. He said, tell himself, you are charged for speeding. He said, start to shout, the police is lying. He said, tell himself, don't shout, they said no sport. And he charged himself for contempt of court. Well, I nearly dropped when he took out the pen and start to sum up. Partner, I start to study whether he would put his own self in custody. Again, I was wrong. He took out the mirror and asked himself to pay $20. The magistrate bust out a cry and say, your honor, I will need some time to pay. He said, tell yourself, you are charged for speeding. He said, start to show the policeman lying. He said, tell yourself, all right, I will be kind. You have a lifetime to pay the fine.
That's great.
Oh, that's great.
This is a lovely guitar, Doug.
Thank you.
How did you land your hands on this one?
That's a 1929 Gibson, and that was a gift that was given to me by a wonderful woman from Denman Island. Her name was Ella Day, and she passed away a few months ago, sadly. But it's every now and then you meet an angel, as you know, when you feel like you're ready to pack it in with your music, and you meet someone and they do something like that, and it keeps you going for a while. And that was one of those situations where I was kind of going, why am I doing this? You know?
Yes.
And then someone comes along and does something like that, and you feel vindicated. You feel like, okay, I can keep going. But it's a gorgeous guitar, for sure.
No, it's so true, actually. I find, in music, I think been like that as well. You know, there are times when it's been the kindness and the encouragement of the people around us have really kept us at it. you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, who are your mentors?
Oh, well, I suppose my mentors initially were in this type of music were records. You know,
Okay.
I studied when I was younger. I studied classical guitar under a wonderful teacher called Chris McCourt in Ottawa after I got to Canada. But and then it's yeah. I mean, I still try to keep that up a little bit. But my mentors in calypso initially were records. You know, I would go over old records, and then when I started going back to Trinidad a lot, my father would take me to the calypso tents. Now, we call every venue where they perform calypso a tent because that's what they were in the early days, these bamboo tents. But nowadays, the tent could be the basement of a trade union hall or
Okay.
basement building. But we would go to see I remember the first one I saw was the Lord Kitchener's calypso tent, and we met him afterwards. And I was really blown away by the cleverness of the lyrics, the humor, and it was nice to see music that could deal with very serious topics but not take itself too seriously.
Sure.
And there was a lot of heckling. The audience would heckle the artists, who would heckle them back, and they'd improvise verses about the audience. It was just very, very vibrant, And so every time I've gone back to Trinidad, I've always gone to seek it out wherever it was being played.
Did you consciously get into playing calypso music because you felt like that's who you are, or were you also listening to rock music and pop music and all that stuff?
Yeah, I guess I just have always listened to a lot of different types of music. And, my first band was called Outcry in Ottawa. It was sort of a reggae, kind of rockish reggae band.
Okay.
But that's when we started actually experimenting with the calypso sound, the old-time calypso sound, and that we've kind of continued with in Cobo Town.
Oh, okay. Have you been able to take your music back home? And
Yes,
play
a
it there?
couple of times. Yeah, we've managed to get back there and perform.
And how is it received?
It's received very well, even though I confess it's always a bit intimidating. Trinidadian audiences, believe it or not, are quite stoic when they listen to calypso, right? But then they get very lyrically involved, which is very gratifying for a songwriter. So yeah, it's great.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, you're listening to Drew Gonsalves from the band Cobo Town. People want to find out more about you. Is it just cobotown.com or?
Yeah, cobotown.com, and we have a Facebook and a Twitter page that we that we post news to, and especially when we're going out on tour or we have new music that we're.
Do you
releasing.
calypso tweet?
Do I? I'm too long-winded for tweets, honestly.
Okay.
The Cumberland Hotel on Dunsmuir Avenue in Cumberland has live music with a different band every Saturday night. Variety is the spice of life. A half rack of ribs, 6 wings, a baked potato, and a salad. Now back to NorthWest Music with Mary Ruth Harris and Doug Cox.
Welcome back to NorthWest Music. I'm Mary Ruth Harris, and with me here in studio is Mr. Doug Cox and our very special musical guest, Drew Gonsalves. Now, Drew, I have a question for you. In calypso music, what is the role of women?
Well, it's a role that's changed over time. At the beginning, calypso was really a man's music, and there were some great female calypsonians as far back as the 20s and 30s. The first one was Lady Aire and Lady Trinidad, but up until maybe the late 1970s, early 80s, women were really sort of marginal figures in calypso, until the rise of a calypsonian called Calypso Rose. And she became the first calypso monarch. There's a competition every year in Port of Spain for the best calypsos, and she just shot to the top of the music, where she's been ever since. And I think ever since that time, more and more women have become calypsonians, and Rose is probably now the at least most internationally known calypsonian from Trinidad.
And so, say in the last 5 years, have you seen a much bigger role that women are taking on in calypso? Are there more and more women entering the calypso music scene?
I think more and more as time goes by,
Okay.
you know, and again, like starting in the 70s and 80s, you know, more, you know, it's still, I think majority of Calypsonians are still probably men, you know,
Okay.
but again, you know, since that time, there have been more and more women all the time, you know,
Okay.
in Toronto, every year there's a calypso competition and or calypso tents that run, and there are a few very strong female calypsonians, and one of them is, you know, the foremost calypsonian in Canada, Makome Fifi,
Okay.
and yeah, and Calypso Rose recently, her last album, which I was very happy to help with the writing and production on, you know, became a kind of a runaway hit in Europe. And giving Calypso kind of a prominence it hasn't had since Harry Belafonte,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
and it's really wonderful to see that. So I think she's a real inspiration to a lot of younger girls in Trinidad and in her home island of Tobago, you know, coming up that they could have a future in that music.
Awesome.
So she doesn't live in Canada. She still lives in Trinidad, does she?
She lives between New York and Tobago.
Oh, okay.
And these days, she seems to be living a lot of her time in Paris as well.
I might just say that we actually had Calypso Rose play at Vancouver Island Music Fest a
Oh,
few
did
years
you?
back. So it was great to see her there, and I know her career has really taken off since then. We don't claim credit for that, but
Well, you could.
it's great to see. But congratulations! I didn't know you were involved in her,
Oh, no, thank you.
That's
in her
awesome.
last album.
Now, what about your own album?
Our own album, yeah, it's just come out. It's called Where the Galleon Sank.
Okay.
And it takes a lot of its inspiration from the history of the Caribbean.
Oh, okay.
I got the name for the title actually occurred to me one time. I was out with a friend actually on a filming shoot. He was scoping out sites actually, and we're on this little fishing boat in the Gulf of Paria. It's this body of water that stretches between Trinidad and Venezuela. And on the way out to the shoot, you know, underneath the sea, you know, the waves, you know, you see the rusted out shells of old sunken ships. You know, and it had me thinking, you know, of how much of our history in the Caribbean, like any other maritime people, like
Yes.
like the people of this island, you know,
Yes.
lies buried under the ocean. So since it was such an inspiration, history, the events of the past on the songs, I thought that you know, writing them was a bit like, you know, raising one of these boats, you know, up to the surface again.
Awesome.
Nice.
Now, would you two like to play something together?
Yeah.
I'd be delighted.
So what are you going to play?
This song is called Guaya Gayare, and Guaya Gayare is this remote bay on the east coast of Trinidad,
Okay.
and it's supposed to be the first sight that Christopher Columbus, on his third voyage to the West Indies, had of the island of Trinidad.
Okay.
And I guess it sort of ruminates on the idea that, you know, so much can happen in a moment. You know, some of these places bear witness to events that, you know, change the history of the world. You know, so this volume. I dreamt a long and lonely bay, first to catch the light of day, as dawn comes rushing over waves at Guaya Gayare. First sight of those who passing through believe the world they found was new. You almost might believe it too in Guaya Gayare. Three sails went by not long ago, years of fire to unfold. The embers are still growing cold in Guaya Gayare. Guaya Gayare. Row on row of green crown trees lean out over tossing seas, as if pulled back by memories in Guaya Gayare. Guaya Gayare. Black as oil, yellow as gold. The sun spelled dangerous to the soul. They're grey as death if truth be told. In Guayagayare. And when the dawn begins to break its line, and when the dawn begins to break its light, refracted by the spray, sense colors rolling over waves across the silent bay, across the silent bay, across the silence broken by the coming of the day. I dreamt a far forgotten bay whose long and winding name remains to tell us of a vanished age. Guayagayare, 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 Guayagayare.
All right. Doug, I had no idea you knew how to play calypso
Oh,
music.
yeah.
I knew you're multi-talented.
Is that one? That's one of your own?
Yes, that's one of my own
beautiful,
of the
beautiful
new
song.
record. Yeah,
Very nice.
Awesome.
thank you.
Now, is calypso, like, that one was a little bit slower than normal calypso, right? Like, I didn't realize there was actually different speeds of calypso. I thought it was just
Oh yeah,
full on all the time.
definitely. And some of the stuff that I write, I must be honest, I don't know if I would even consider it calypso, but that one gets its rhythm from kind of the Spanish Trinidadian rhythm called parang music, you know.
Okay.
But it's of course a lot slower than regular parang. But this kind of 6/8 rhythm, you don't hear that much in calypso music. So you're right to note that it's definitely not the standard rhythm for that music for sure.
Do you have a favorite rhythm?
Do I have a favorite rhythm? Oh goodness. No, I can't think I don't know if I have a favorite. I think there's ones that I play better than others, and I like those. I like them for that reason. But a lot of the calypso rhythm is pretty straight ahead, and you know, with a bit of syncopation. You know, especially even in like the vocal lines, you hear there's a lot of kind of a lot of offbeat sort of rhythms, even in the singing.
I think what I am enjoying the most is that they're stories. Like they're actually telling little stories in every single song that you're singing, and that takes me back to my childhood when it seemed that all the music told stories, and that doesn't happen so much anymore. Now it's more about the catch line and then a few things to go with it. But I really like that it's an entire story, and you can capture that whole essence of that.
Yeah, thanks. That's one of the things that really drew me to calypso as well, was the storytelling, you know. And because it goes back, you know, such a long time, you know, it really, there have been so many events that have happened so in the past in Trinidad and elsewhere that have been commented on by calypsonians, and yeah, that's something that I always found very, very intriguing about it.
There may be a lot to talk about over the next 4 years, let's say, as well.
Yes,
I
indeed.
wasn't going to go there.
Oh, it's a good thing about what's going on in the world right now is there's lots of fodder
material.
for songwriters, I think.
Yes, well, and it's a songwriter's paradise as well as, you know, the comedians are having a heyday.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's talk about Cobo Town for a minute. It's quite an international band, isn't it? Like your band members are from many different cultures, and it seems like the music of Cobo Town is a nice mixture that comes with influences from a whole bunch of different styles of music.
Yeah, definitely. They come from different cultures, but also different musical backgrounds. You know, some of our guys are unabashed rockers, and that comes out in the music a lot. You know, or you know, they have a background in jazz or something. You know, so you know, while it has its heavy roots in the Caribbean, you know, yeah, definitely the guys in the group have really brought a lot of different sounds, a lot of different attitudes to the music that I would have never created on my own.
Right. And is it a band that the members have stayed with for quite some time now, or?
Yes, I mean, there's some members in the band who were with me in other bands since I was, 15 when I first came to Canada. So I've been lucky to have had such, long-standing comrades in the group.
That's wonderful. Is there anything that you hope to do with your music in the future that you haven't done yet?
I mean, like achieve everlasting fame and riches. Well, exactly that. No, just I've really enjoyed the road so far, and I think one of the things that I've always found interesting about music, I guess it's the thing that gives the musician a certain amount of anxiety, but a certain amount of excitement, is that we really don't know where the future holds. What comes tomorrow. And that's something that can be quite exciting.
Fantastic.
All right. So we are here at the Shaw TV studios in Campbell River. I'm Mary Ruth Harris, Mr. Doug Cox, and our special guest, Mr. Drew Gonsalves of Cobo Town. And I think we're up for one more song. Take us out for the end of the show.
Sounds good.
This song is called King Sugar, and it's on the Where the Galleon Sank album. And in recent years in the Caribbean, the sugar mills have all closed down, and it really is the final passing of an era that really shaped the entire region. It was the industry that packed the region full of slaves and indentured workers, and in recent years it's become less and less important, and now finally it's gone. So the song, I guess, immediately it's about that, but really in a deeper way it's about impermanence. That nothing lasts forever, no matter how immovable it may seem, and what is here today is often gone tomorrow.
Okay.
King Sugar dead, that's what they said. King Sugar dead, I tell you that's what they said. King Sugar dead, here come again. From the cane to the rum to kingdom coming. What's the reason why we came there from where we came from? From character, barrack, press out the syrup. Send the best away, I drink the rest as warrap. Glucose, fructose, maltose, overdose. Last meal close, old king comatose. So from island to island and coast to coast. Gone was the sovereign that used to but I say King Sugar dead, that's what they said. King Sugar dead, I tell you that's what they said. King Sugar dead, here come again. King Sugar dead. Long was his rainy years of lash and chain. Humbling in the night to start the cambule, where flames burn night and day, keeping snakes at bay. Sweet in case a continental way. None mourn this demise, bittersweet enterprise. Few surprise when the king capsized. So from island to island and coast to coast, gone was the sovereign that held the throne. I say King Sugar dead, that's what they said. King Sugar dead, I tell you that's what they said. King Sugar dead, here come again. King Sugar dead, guitar solo. Like gold in the glasses, blood flowed thick and slow like molasses. Gilded age, bird sang in the cage, but time is always turning another page. Kingdom overgrown in the grasses, none can hold back time as it passes. Of his domain, all that remains is ruin standing in fields of cane. I say the King Sugar dead, that's what they said. King Sugar dead, I tell you that's what they said. King Sugar dead, come again. King Sugar dead.
Well, that wraps it up for this edition of Northwest Music. Drew, thank you so much for coming and spending time with us today.
Absolutely my pleasure.
All right, thank you so much. And Doug, as always, brilliant music together. Absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, Drew.
No, pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us for Northwest Music. We'll see you soon.
Northwest Music, presented by the Cumberland Hotel, located on Dunsmuir Avenue in Cumberland. They have live music every Wednesday and Saturday, pool tables, darts, and a menu with everything from chicken to burgers to fish and chips to ribs and wings. Thank you for watching Northwest Music.